Here's a thought about acquisition stories. I've been fortunate in my life to meet and be invited to view the collection of over a dozen big-time, serious, big-money photography collectors. And it's always interesting to do so because you see some fascinating photography and they're fun to talk to and talk shop, etc., etc. But there's an interesting observation I've made with virtually every one of these collectors I've talked to. They don't show their work and talk about how important it is to them in terms of reaching their soul. They never talk about the meaning of a photograph or those kinds of what we might call emotional content issues. No, it's not about the photograph and its place in the art world. It's always about the acquisition story, how hard they had to search for this piece, how high they had to bid in the auction to get this piece, how difficult this photographer was to find, how difficult the photographer's life was, so they were able to purchase a large quantity of photographs for a fraction of their normal value, how this piece hung in a museum and wasn't for sale, but the collector was able to talk the gallery or the owner into selling it to them. And it's a rare piece because the photographer hardly sells any, etc. Acquisition story after acquisition story. What fascinates me about that, in spite of the fact that the stories are kind of interesting, but what fascinates me about that is I doubt that's what the photographer intended at all. They meant something about the content of what they photographed and how they presented it and how it's meaningful to them and maybe even to the history of photography. But that never seems to come up in conversation with collectors, and I find that fascinating.